hey, look at you wanting to buy a rental property out of state, which I think is great. No matter your reasoning, whether your market is too hot, too expensive, I think everywhere is pretty expensive these days. I'm going to walk you through step by step how to purchase that out-of-state rental property. For people new to the channel, my name is Jake. I'm a 30-something living in Summer, USA with my wife and our dogs Archie and Harper. I'm a full-time worker, a part-time personal finance dabbler, a travel enthusiast, and throughout this video, I will be using images from our trip to Naxos, Greece. So in the past, I purchased a property that was out of state. I haven't made a video on that yet, but I purchased that without actually seeing the house, and you probably think that I'm making that up, but I promise I'm not. You still don't believe me, do you? All right, let's go. I'll show you.
Safe travels, my friend.
Thank you. And just like that, this is the house, and this is only the second time that I've ever seen it. So let's go back and talk more about it, and let's do it in a faster way this time. Do you believe me now, or at least I hope so? Anywho, these are the steps I went through to buy that first property of mine. These are steps you can follow to get rid of all of your anxiety or nervousness you may be feeling about trying to purchase a home that's out of state or you may have not seen. This video, I won't be doing the full deep dive into how to buy a rental property because I already have a video on that, and I will link that up above and down below. And so if you're looking for a deep dive into the analysis on how to buy or purchase a rental property, you can use that link there. Within this video, I will touch on the differences with buying where you live versus out of state to get over some of the fears you may have. Lots of people think that you're going to be crazy for buying out of state or that this is a huge risk, and I'm here to prove to you that it is not, but let's actually dive into the video. First off, I would like to say that I am wearing shorts, even though it may not look like it. But the first step in all this is being able to choose a market. Most people start by investing in the market that they're currently in, and that's the easiest way to get started, by buying a home, live in that home for 1 year, and just keep repeating that cycle over and over again, and after a couple of years you have a couple of homes. But let's say that you live in a high cost of living area and that just isn't possible. That's perfectly okay, and I was in a similar situation where I didn't want to go that route. Typically when you buy a rental property, they want 20 to 25% down, and I just didn't have an extra $60,000 lying around. You can move into a home with only 5% down, and I did it later on, and I tripled my money, and I was paid almost $90,000 to do that. So if you want to learn more about that, and that's listed up above and down below. Most people living in high cost areas have to get creative to go these routes, whether they are doing a house hack, a rent by the room situation, turning part of their home into an Airbnb, converting spaces into bedrooms, or whatever else I can think of. That was really house hacking, where I was living in a quadruplex where I was cash flowing over $8,000 a month, but I was in the process of remodeling that, and I didn't want to leave that because I was doing a lot of the rehab. So it was kind of a sticky situation, but I didn't want to move, so I was looking for another alternative option. Big picture of my life, I knew that I was going to want to have a house, which is how to stay later on, whether that was a vacation home, an Airbnb. I knew that I was going to have to begin this process and get comfortable with it, and so I figured I might as well try with a cheaper property and while I'm young, because if I'm going to make a mistake, I might as well do it when I have time to recover. But back to picking a market, you want to be more strategic than I was. I was looking at homes in my area, and I randomly looked where my brother lives out in Kansas City, and that's where I found some properties for like $80,000. Granted, this was 2018, but that was still pretty cheap to me. Once I saw the prices, I was thinking worst case, I could always have my brother go check the property, or if I was doing a rehab, I knew that I would have a point of contact within the area if I needed any help. The Kansas City area was an area that I was also familiar with because I went to graduate school in Oklahoma State, which is a couple hours away, and I would come up almost every other month and go Cowboys. There are some advantages of knowing the area, whether you used to live there or you know somebody there. That can all be a great help. But if I were to pick again, here's what I would look for: the unemployment rate, population growth, job industries, and then more specifically, different neighborhoods, the gentrification, and crime rates. Places to find this information would be off of citydata.com, census data, and if you don't know where else to begin, they can always start with Google. You obviously want to invest in an area that has population growth because you don't want no one to live there in 10 years. You also want to have a diverse workforce because you don't want to have just one company and they got a business and then everyone leaves. Although I felt more comfortable knowing someone in Kansas City, a lot of those numbers also checked out, and I do think that their population will grow, and if Patrick Mahomes has anything to say about it, they'll be relevant for a couple years. And I would try to find the sweet spot of a place that is growing but isn't too expensive yet. And I would also be trying to find a place that I like to live or to visit, because if I want to live there, other people may want to as well. Now that you have your market, you can begin to focus on different areas. In Kansas City, a fancy area is around the plaza, and that's where we're going to start to look first. While looking around, you also want to make sure that the places you're looking are within your budget, because there's no point in wasting your time there. You'll also want to begin to make contacts in the area to get the ball rolling. The people you'll need to find are a lender, a real estate agent, a property manager, and a contractor. You want to find people that are able to fit your needs or that are the experts in your area. This can be a challenge because as a newbie, a lot of people may not take you as serious, but you can always look in the area to see who is doing a lot of business, to make sure that they are qualified and are knowledgeable, and begin to touch base with them and see who is most consistently trying to work with you as well. What I did was go to biggerpockets.com, which is a real estate forum, and just mention how I was going to begin to buy in that area and looking for advice, and people began to reach back out to me. There's one person who remained the most consistent, and that's who I chose to work with. Because she was most reliable, I chose her because I needed somebody that I knew that I could count on or who would be responsive. She was also the person which I trust the most, or as much as you can trust someone that you just met online. What is nice about using a platform like Bigger Pockets is you're able to see the track record on the deals they've done, the kinds of questions that they have answered, and get a general comfortability with their knowledge and expertise. You also know if I'm going on to a real estate investor website that they have some knowledge of working with real estate investors, which can be a huge help. Since this is ultimately a stranger, you want to be sure on what the intentions are, whether they're trying to help you or just sell a home. My agent really gained my trust when she would explain to me why certain properties were not a good fit, or would even drive by them and say she didn't go in because it was in a bad neighborhood and that's not what we wanted. This made me feel that she was willing to be patient to make sure that we got the right home and not just any home. From there, she was able to recommend a lender, which I still found some on my own just to make sure that I was getting the right closing costs or the appropriate rate, but ultimately went with the one that she recommended because everything else was pretty similar. And I like using lenders that my real estate agent has some experience with because there is some familiarity there, and if they get any kind of kickback, I want to help them out as well. You can start by looking online at different lenders and being able to send them a sample email to explain who you are, what you're trying to accomplish, and see whether they're a good fit as well, because you're looking for financing, but they're also looking to sell a mortgage, and so this should be a mutually beneficial situation. Finding a property manager may be similar steps, as you can go online and search around that way. You can ask your real estate agent if they know of any. You can go to Bigger Pockets to try to find one that way, or you can even go to rental listing websites like Zillow or apartments.com and see who is listing a lot of rentals within that area, because then you know who is the most active and may have the best insights within that area. You will also want to interview them, and I do have a link down below where I used to have a blog when I have 27 questions that you should make sure that you're asking your property manager, because you want to be aware of how are they going to handle repairs, the eviction process, how they handle collecting money, really everything like that. And so I have that link down below. My agent said that she did property management, and I was really hesitant about having her do both of those things, but I told her that I would give her a trial period, and almost 4 years later, she's the best property manager that I've ever had, so I kind of lucked out there. Contractors can be the tough part, especially at a distance, but hopefully if you're networking with different people, you are able to get a couple recommendations. So being able to network to find a contractor is a huge part, and once you find a good one, do not try to lose them. Now that you have identified your market, you've assembled your team, let's really focus in on which area you will be investing. One of the things you want to do is to look at a crime map to make sure that you're not getting into any areas that you want a part of. Some people do well in what is called a D-class area, or sometimes even a war zone area, but that isn't for me, and I typically try to be in a working class area because I find these tenants to be more appreciative, responsible, and take better care of my properties. You'll also find these homes to be more affordable, which is something that I can do right now. Some rules of thumb that people use when trying to invest are things like the 1% rule, which just say you should get 1% of a home's value in rent. So if you have a $100,000 house, you should get $1,000 per month, and this isn't going to work in every area, and people typically do this to weed out homes which aren't going to work. So now that you have identified a property, let's check the crime map, and bingo bango, it works out. Now that we've got that taken care of, let's see what it can rent for. You are able to use programs like Rentometer a couple times for free, and then at that point you would need to pay, or you are able to use Zillow to just check what other homes in the area are renting for. While on Zillow, I typically like to check what other homes in the area have sold for to be able to make sure I'm not overpaying. Now that we have the area checked out, the crime, the rent, and all that, let's begin to make sure that the numbers are going to work. And I do have a whole video on rental analysis, so if you want to check that out, I have that linked up above and down below. You want to check and make sure that you're able to cash flow the property, and this is just a quick overview. While in the process, you want to get actual quotes on property insurance, property taxes, what your actual mortgage is going to be, to make sure that the numbers still work out. When doing a rough estimate, I typically use realtor.com because I find that one to be the most accurate. This was a good overview on the whole process, and I could have done a whole video on how to find the correct agent or how to find the right property manager, but I think you have enough to be able to be in the process. But if you want a specific video on one of these topics, then leave me a comment and I will do one for you. But I would like to say that you may never feel 100% about buying a rental property, and that could be even in the market you live in, and especially when you're going out of state, and you'll have people tell you that you're crazy for doing this, but I have been doing it for almost 4 years now, and I have no regrets except for when now I had to evict that tenant, but that's a whole other video. Thanks so much for watching, and if you guys have a better idea of how to buy a property out of state, and if you know somebody that could benefit from this information, then consider sharing this with them. And if you want to help me grow the channel, then tap that like button. And if you want to be around for when I post my next video, do not forget to subscribe. But I will see you guys next time.